Do you remember when intruders took over? Big profiles, flash, movement. But what if the real edge is going smaller? What if the fish that just slid past your size 2 intruder would have eaten a sparse size 10 hairwing? Today we talk about the other side of modern steelhead and salmon fishing. In this episode, we connect where Lake Superior pours into Lake Huron, and we break down what happens when you shift from bulk to balance, from heavy push to subtle presence. Alex Belonga is here, and he's going to share all these details, including the temple dog versus the bulky intruders. We're going to get into what this pushing water is all about. We're going to talk about tubes versus double flies and what actually lands more fish. We're going to talk Great Lakes migratory rainbows versus coastal. It's all here today. And if you've ever stood in a run wondering where to go bigger or if you should actually go lighter, this conversation's for you. All right, let's get into it. Here he is, Alex Belonga. You can find him at Straits on the Fly on Instagram. How you doing, Alex?
Good, Dave. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. I'm excited about this one today. We're going to be talking back into steelhead flies and kind of everything you do. I think I first heard about you on In the Bucket. Brian had you on the podcast, episode number 6, so that was a couple years ago. People can go back and listen to that story. You're on there with Trevor, and I think who was the other guest on there? I can't. Or was it just you and Trevor?
Yep, just Trevor Kovich and I, and Brian was spent a lot of time on that one too. So
yeah, that's right. So we have that episode, but today we're going to talk more. We're going to dig deeper about tying flies, steelhead flies, fishing, all that. But just give us an update in the last couple of years, maybe what's been going on with you.
Yeah, man. So I'll back up just a little bit. 2018, I picked up a vise and just started tying, really loved it, and was just kind of tying every day, and it really helps to feed the addiction up north here, because in the wintertime where I'm at, we just lock right up, everything freezes, so we don't really get to go out for 4 months or whatever it is. But last couple of years, my wife and I own a business. It's a greenhouse and florist shop, so we do grow in the greenhouse, like bedding plants and hanging baskets, and she runs a full floral shop, so we do a lot of weddings and full setups. Anyway, that's grown quite a bit. And of course, our kids are growing and getting older. So I've been slowly stepping away from, commercial fly tying, but still staying active on social media as well. So
you're still out there going strong. Nice.
Yeah.
And maybe we could a fly. I'm not that familiar with the munker fly. Maybe we can start there at the top. We're going to bounce around a little bit, but maybe describe what that fly is.
Yeah. That's a good one, because I feel like maybe if anybody knows me for anything, I've tied that quite a bit, and it's somewhat of a unique fly. The munker fly, that was the first fly. When I started tying in 2018, I was friends with a guide across the border in Canada, and I live 45 minutes from the Sioux Ontario border right there, so we're pretty close. And he wanted some munker flies for his home river. He didn't say the word munker. Basically, he described it, a fly with maybe a little zonker and a kind of a deer head on it. And so I, being a new fly tyer, I went right to YouTube, and I think I might have reached out to Stuart Foxall too and said, any videos on how to tie something like that. And it sent me to Kim Sorensen, who actually invented the munker fly. And that fly, essentially, the original design of it is just a short tube with a bead right on the back. You start tying there, and he puts an American possum zonker wing, and then he does this deer head, essentially, which is just a really wide deer head, but you don't keep stacking hair. You do it one time and just try to spin a sparse amount of hair, but that's really wide, and effectively the deer head becomes like a turbo cone in front of that body of the fly, so I will say here in the States, though, or North America, people have been tying patterns like that, though. The Zudler is one that's been around for a while. I haven't, looked into it too much, but it was, a rabbit strip on a hook with a muddler head. So people have been doing stuff like that for a while.
Yep.
The Munker is just, that's Kim's name, and it has a distinctive shape to it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I mean I've asked a lot of steelhead anglers on this podcast, about like what their favorite fly is. And I'll
hmm
bet you a muddler, if I had to guess, maybe comes up more than any other, at least
Oh,
for,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so the muddler is no question and the difference between this and a muddler is that it's just basically there's a few differences, but the head's a little bit bigger. It's not quite as trimmed. Or how would you describe the big difference between the munker and the muddler?
Sure. I mean, one would be size of the fly, So the muddler, most people when they fish a muddler, myself included, they're not going to run a heavy sink tip. Although taking flies that kind of want to float and pulling them down a little bit on a light sink tip is a good trick. But I think most people with a muddler, they're going to run a long leader, a Scandi line, some of the more modern mid-spay lines that are out there now, and just let that thing dance up on the surface, get in the film, do whatever it does, right? It kind of skates, it kind of goes under, and it's a smaller, buggier pattern that's going to be used more what you guys would call summer steelhead, though I'm sure plenty of
Or Atlantic salmon probably would be
Oh
just,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
Atlantic's quite a bit. But I mean, that being said too, I know there's guys who skate and use muddlers all winter long for steelhead, and it's
right.
yeah, the muddler just kind of works, and deer hair is just kind of magical, I guess,
Yeah, it
on a
is.
fly, something about it. So the difference with this is this fly, I mean, you can tie it on any platform, but how Kim does it would be on a tube. You're going to put a big zonker on the back. It's going to have that size of like a winter steelhead fly that we think of, right? Like a big leech or kind of intruder size fly. So, I mean, the size right off the bat is what separates it. And then the deer head on the munker too, you're going to use much longer. You're going to leave the tips of it and everything flared out to the back. So it's going to be much more of a water pusher, and you're going to pull it down with a sink tip, right? So it's going to be used on a Skagit line or some sort of multi-tip line. So the way you're going to fish it's going to be different too. So yeah.
Yeah. And so describe that. How would you fish that? Maybe describe, are you fishing more steelhead in your area or when you go out? What is your home water you're fishing there?
Yeah, so I mean we have I'm kind of in a interesting central location somewhat.
And where are you again? Remind us again. What city are you?
Yeah, I'm in St. Ignace, Michigan. So it's right, Michigan is basically two peninsulas, right? The lower and the upper. And I'm right in the upper peninsula, and there's a bridge that connects the two, the Mackinac Bridge. And as soon as you drive up from lower Michigan and cross the bridge, the first town you're in when you cross over the bridge is St. Ignace. And essentially, that little area right there is called the Straits of Mackinac, and it's where Lake Huron and Lake Michigan converge. The Mackinac Bridge is the, official dividing line of Lake Michigan, Lake Huron as well, too. So it's a great spot. So I live right on Lake Michigan and Lake Huron.
Wow.
And then north of me, little less than an hour's Lake Superior and all of its tribs as well.
Man, you're right in the middle, man. You are right in the
I
middle of
I am.
everything.
I mean, I'm only, a few hours away from like literally 3 hours from Lake Michigan tribs, like the good ones, like the Muskegon, the Big Man, the Pere Marquette, the Asable is not far from me either. It's only 2, 3 hours, depending on where you want to hit it. We have some couple great rivers in the UP. They're not as prolific as like the Lake Michigan tribs as far as fish and size, but there's way less people on them. Sometimes you're the only person, and I've kind of gravitated more towards that. Home river, though, for me, I would say is the St. Mary's Rapids, and essentially we just drive north. There's the international bridge that connects Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And the way to access that river and come in and wade and fish it is to drive across into Canada and come through the Canadian side. And it's a real interesting waterway. You know, if you look at it on Google Earth, I mean, it's somewhat ugly in the sense, and I want to be careful how I say that, but
Yeah.
there's like, it's industrial because on the Michigan side is the whole lock system for the freighters going in between Superior and Huron, because there's like a 30-foot plus difference between Superior and Huron. So they had to build, they had to build a whole lock system right there with gates and everything else, and that runs that whole stretch. And so you drive into the Canadian side and there is wilderness. It's kind of an island, and you got to hike through that and you get onto the rapids. And it's essentially the flow of the rapids, though, is controlled now by the gates that they set up to control the flow of Superior into Huron. So it's just unique in its setup, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah, so Superior flows into Huron.
Yeah, we're essentially fishing Lake Superior's tail out is one good way of looking at it, because that whole river system is massive. I mean, it goes for several, it goes for 50, 60 miles to connect to Huron, but at the mouth of Huron, it's a mile or two wide, and the water flowing in it is just as cold, as the lake that the fish are swimming up into. So they move up into that river early and kind of on the feed, not really turning or moving into their spawning mode as quick. They're actually hunting up through that river. So we're able to target them. Oftentimes we get just super fresh fish, right? That are not, haven't begun to turn, haven't switched to that whole spawning mode like most other rivers in Michigan. So yeah, it's just a unique waterway.
Is this near Churchville, the town of Churchville? Or no? What's the nearest town where you're fishing there on the rapids?
Well, the town itself is Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario.
Yeah, okay.
And then, I mean, there's other towns in Ontario, but that's mainly just Sioux, Ontario is that whole city that's right there on that river. So yeah,
I see. And the rapids, so you're fishing that area, the rapids are right in that area, right cut right in the downtown area.
Yeah, exactly. You just cross the International Bridge and
you're there.
You got to drive to the right a little bit and cross another section, but it's pretty much all right there. Yeah.
Right there. Okay. And then you're fishing for fish that are basically migrating. And that's the cool thing. These steelhead, right? They're migrating between the two lakes. Is that what's going on?
We think so. It's actually an interesting concept. Some of them are staying there or spawning there for sure. Some of them we think might be swimming under the gates and heading into Superior as well. And then there's some that kind of just hang out in that system all year as well. And there's also, they still have the Kamloops strain of rainbow trout in that river, which is, I think that's from BC. And they're a fairly large resident rainbow trout as well. And that might be the only spot in the Great Lakes to find Kamloops. I know Ernest Hemingway, that was one of his favorite waterways to fish, and specifically for the Kamloops rainbows that were in there. So
Golden Fly Shop isn't your average fly shop. They have a 12-foot shark painted like a cutthroat hovering over a huge selection of the best rods in the business, a massive assortment of tying materials, and their famous steakhouse streamer display. And it's the hub for a community of anglers who never stop tinkering with new ways to catch fish. Sometimes the conversation behind the counter includes what hatches are going off and what techniques are working best. Then tales of destination fishing adventures, sought-after species, or a good old congratulations when a customer brings stories of finally connecting with that fish they've searched for forever. With a growing online store and a budding YouTube channel, you'll be able to follow along with their fun antics, international adventures, and helpful fly fishing tips. Golden Fly Shop, where the community is hanging out, even if they're supposed to be working. That's goldenflyshop.com. Check them out right now. Fly Fish with Me Utah. Discover year-round blue ribbon trout fishing on the famed Provo River. Choose a guided walk and wade or a scenic float and experience big trout, stunning canyons, and unforgettable days on the water. You can book your adventure right now at flyfishwithmeutah.com. World-class water, incredible fishing. That's flyfishwithmeutah.com.
How do you, the munker, describe that? How do you fish the munker? Are
Right,
you
right.
fishing in this section?
Sometimes the St. Mary's is a really clear waterway, and in the fall that particular river system really lends itself well to longer spay lines, long leaders, and smaller type flies, just because of how clear it is and how alive the fish are. The high oxygen water kind of churning through the gates and everything. And I've kind of discovered they'll chase flies and take them up high as well. So I've kind of changed my game there. But most other Great Lakes rivers and tributaries, I should say, the munker I like quite a bit, especially when it's, whenever the steelhead are in the spring or in the fall when there's high water and it's usually kind of cold, and I'll run it just under a sink tip like you would any other fly. You know what I mean? Any other winter steelhead fly, whatever your
Yep.
favorite setup and section of T material or whatnot. Sometimes I'll accommodate if I really want to go deeper, maybe run a heavier tip to kind of balance out the deer head that's on it. But yeah, swing it through and pulse it through. There's another way you can do it too, which is if you have wide enough of a stream, especially, think like king salmon, Chinook salmon, sometimes they pool up and show themselves and just get lockjawed, Well, one way is to run, your really heavy sink tip, maybe even a multi-density head, and kind of lengthen out your tippet on the munker a little bit and, cast so it's coming over top of them and kind of like jig or pulse your rod, because you have that heavy, maybe a multi-density Skagit, heavy sink tip, and what that fly is going to do, since it has a little bit of buoyancy then by giving it that extra tippet, is it's going to kind of, like those quick fish plugs, if you reel on them, they dive down and
they dive
shake,
down.
but then they kind of rise back up, they suspend almost, so it's kind of a dirty trick, but any fly that has some buoyancy to it, you can apply that technique to it. You know what I mean?
Right. That's awesome.
Almost like you would a pike fly or something.
Yeah,
So.
like a bite fly. How many flies out there? And you tie quite a bit through I know, Brian, you guys talked about this on the podcast, that I think you've tied a lot of flies for him for the Skeena system. But how many of the flies are pushing water versus, say, doing other things out there? Like this one, or would you describe that? Is that what this is doing? Is that the main thing this is doing? Is kind of or is it more floating?
No, I think you're kind of pushing water to some extent. That's an interesting concept. I guess I would say anything that has physical mass underneath the water, when you swing it through, it's moving water to some extent, right? Like you can't pull something through the water without it having some sort of push in the water.
Yeah, this is a physics, right? If we had
Just
a
the
physics
physics.
master here, it's like it seems to be that it would push water, right? If you've got some structure going through the water, that it's pushing that water out of the way. Just like there's other things. I always thought that what are the discs called? That you put on the front there.
Turbo discs.
Turbo discs. Are those meant to push water, or is that for something else?
So the claim is that they do either or push water or create like a little vortex for water to go around to maybe protect your marabou, right, from it just collapsing. I've heard people on both sides say, just some dubbing up front works just as good, if not better. If we put it in a water tank, we can't tell the difference. And then I've heard other people say, no, it is nice. And, by the shape of it, the water flows over. And, I think those are meant more for protecting, making the water fly over your softer material so it doesn't collapse. I'll be honest with you. I put them on because they kind of look nice.
Yeah, they look cool.
Yeah, so I can't say I've never gone under and studied it. I do know one of the ways, though, that fish, hunt is they sense something moving in the water.
Yeah, they sense their lateral line.
Right. And I guess my thought there too is, um, I mean, anything in the water, no matter how streamlined it is or whatever, is going to create some sort of noise, just the physics. So everything moves water. I don't know if it's just maybe it's semantics, moving water, pushing water. I've seen sculpins underneath the water that have bigger heads. What's interesting though is I kind of was thinking about that Kim, when I kind of discovered that the munker is a pattern and I was tying it and, looking at Kim's theory behind it, and it was designed and he lives in Denmark and fishes a lot of rivers up there, though, up into Sweden and Norway, but it was designed around the Danish rivers, I guess, that come in pretty muddy and dark, and for Atlantic salmon. And this provided more push in the water, maybe to allow them to see it or feel it, however a fish does that. And it seems to work quite well. I was thinking about pushing water. I mean, a lot of times when I was first tying flies and trying to figure out what colors for our fish, I would just, Google what do, um, spin fishermen, just normal gear fishermen, what do they like to fish, for steelhead in the Great Lakes, or what colors did they use, and that kind of sent me down the rabbit trail of like MEP spinners, right? And I think out west there's blue fox spinners, or there's a couple, the Steelhead Slammer Company. Well, if you go on their website or MEPS, they'll tell you, like what does a spinner actually do? Well, a spinner like pushes water and makes a lot of noise underneath there. And on the MEPS website, it says, our spinners, catch fish when they're not eating regular bait and when the normal stuff doesn't work. Now, I know there's a lot of marketing in that, but there's something to
Right.
be said there, right? Because spinners catch fish all over. Um, and so maybe, if you were to kind of apply that, to the munker when the fish are maybe not actively biting or whatever, you put something else under there that makes a little bit more noise and they go after it. So.
Yeah, yeah. No, that all makes sense.
I mean, people have used things like that for steelhead and salmon and pretty much every other species that you can find in a lake and a river in North America for a long time. I mean, ever since MEPS came out with spinners.
Right.
So,
Well, that makes a lot of sense. What about on some of the, so we've got the munker fly. What are some of the other flies that you're tying, or in the past that maybe that you've tied some of your popular patterns? And are you tying for Great Lakes, West Coast, kind of all over the place?
yeah, so when I was tying orders and stuff, it was kind of all over the place. There were some on the Great Lakes. There was a good amount on the West Coast. And I mean, I haven't really invented any patterns. I suppose you could say maybe I've put my touch on a couple or whatever, but I got into the Scandi style flies quite a bit, like temple dogs and stuff like that. And they're just, not as many people tying those over here. So I would send a good amount of temple dogs out there. Started tying some cool patterns with Snow Runner that I were inspired by, like Yop Kalkman's style flies. Snow Runner's just a hair material, and I would use it like somebody would use craft fur. It's a little bit longer, more structure, so just kind of reverse tying, hollow tying that against a bead and a couple wraps of marabou and some simple kind of stuff, and the flies called the runner. So I sent quite a few of those out as well. I did go through a little season there where I was tying a lot of Rhea intruders, and they're fun to tie. They're really pretty, and that would be more of a West Coast style too. So, but I seem to have tied a lot of munkers as well for people. So,
What do you think on colors? Are the colors, what would be your top colors for winter or for steelhead? Do you think that you've?
In the Great Lakes?
Yeah, is there a difference between Great Lakes versus the West Coast?
I think so. I mean, one, technically the steelhead here, because they haven't gone into saltwater, a steelhead. And I think, and that's a debate that can be a lot of fun or people get really angry about.
Oh yeah.
I tend to have fun with it a little bit.
Who gets the most angry on that debate?
I
What
think
is
the
the
guys
biggest?
on the West Coast, I mean, and I
Yeah,
don't
that's
want
what it
to
is.
attack them too much, but like, because all of us here, like, everybody I know on the Great Lakes that loves steelhead, we all seem to share kind of a passion for the wild steelhead out west. A lot of us travel out there, and, even though we're not there and as involved, I know, quite a few anglers here in the Great Lakes. Jeff Liskey
Oh yeah.
is one of them, and a lot of guys on the West Coast came from the Great Lakes too, right? Zach Williams was Swing the
Hmm.
Fly, and just a lot of great dudes, right? And so they
Yeah.
all care very passionately about wild steelhead. And so for us here, I don't think we put as much of a divide on. I will say this though, um, that what that changes though is that since our fish don't come from like salt into fresh water, I do think that they feed a little bit more. The big question, why do steelhead bite a fly, right, in the water? And
Right.
that's one of those things. They have it broken up into a few categories they're certain of, but we can't tell for certain. I can say I do think that our steelhead, the migratory rainbow trout, do tend to feed a little bit more, like actively when they come into a river system. So for me, when you say color, where I'm going with that is you're gonna kind of want to match the bait fish forage in our river systems. And so as far as Lake Michigan goes, Kevin Feenstra has a book out there, the bait fish or matching bait fish, and that helped me a lot. So I tend to gravitate more towards, those natural type colors, whether they be the different shades of olives or browns, and copper flash and that the stuff that you would that a lot of guys kind of shy away from on maybe a big winter steelhead fly, and I guess essentially more of those trouty colors then.
Yeah, and I've seen the book here, the matching baitfish patterns and techniques for Great Lakes steelhead and lake run. That was 2020. That's pretty cool. So Kevin put that out just a few, yeah, I mean 6 years ago. But so that's a good book, good
And
resource.
there are a couple bright colors in his. I mean, I know one color on the Great Lakes is kind of a secret. I haven't tried it out west at all. Is like black, copper, Kelly green, stuff like that. And if you look at like Kevin's his the Halloween leech and then the grapefruit leech, and stuff, there's a lot of black in that with a ton of flash, and those seem to work pretty good. So yeah.
Yep, that's it. So and then West Coast on the other end, if you're talking west, what would be the top kind of colors? Maybe two or three.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, I've only fished out there so much, and
But you tied a ton, right,
I,
for
I have,
Niska?
I have. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So, I mean, for me, all my trips out west have predominantly been chasing Chinook,
Oh
because
wow,
I'm a salmon guy through and through. I love
cool.
steelhead, but Atlantics and Chinook are kind of my favorite fish to chase. But yeah, I mean, so sending patterns out west, I mean, the variations of the black and blues, black, orange, blue, black, purple, blue, the orange and pinks, those shades. And then once in a while, I'll talk, a guy into, man, why don't you have like a olive and copper or something, as a good change up fly um, in there, So I haven't, yeah, pretty much out west. But you'll get guys who like, maybe like white and orange or red and orange or black and reds and stuff like that, depending on where they're at or their system, So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Where were you chasing Chinook on the West Coast?
Yeah, so I went up to Brian's Lodge here 2 years in a row. So we were on the Kitimat and then the Skeena system. I went to the Connectoc a few years ago with Alaska West, I think is that. Yep. And I was in Southeast Alaska one time, so I've officially taken like 4 trips for chasing um Chinook out west. So, which is pretty rad. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you've done some Atlantic salmon fishing too?
Uh-huh.
How do is there a comparison, Atlantic salmon versus Chinook salmon?
Yeah, well, I haven't done enough. I haven't like hooked into any of the really big Atlantics or whatever. And to me, yeah, there's a difference, but the Atlantics and um early season, I guess, like Norway and stuff like that, they're fishing them with pretty heavy sinking lines and multi-density tips and large flies. So it seems like they're fishing those early season Atlantics kind of
Similar.
similarly to how you're right, to how
Yeah.
they fish Chinook out west. But then the Atlantic, the season kind of changes, and next thing you know, they're up top with like size 12 or size 10 flies. Newfoundland is a lot like that, and that's where I was.
Oh, you were in Newfoundland.
Yep. So we were chasing with kind of, way up high, no sink tips or anything. Yeah, so I just haven't gotten to do like a full season of Atlantics, in rivers that you get, and the Atlantic season just goes on much longer too because they don't die when they spawn. So there's a
Right.
little overlap, I would say, from what I've researched from early season Atlantic salmon, like in Norway or Russia, where they're fishing huge flies and heavy sink tips and all that kind of stuff, right? That little window for Atlantics, for the big ones, are pretty similar for Chinook.
That's
And
right.
then, yeah, the way they fight and stuff can be a little bit different. So,
Yeah. Where'd you fish in Newfoundland? Did you hit one river or a few?
oh man, we hit a few. We were at that, help me out here. I went
Yeah.
with my buddy Tim and Dave to
Oh,
the,
yeah,
what's
yeah. You
that
went to Portland
lodge?
Creek. You went to Portland
Yep,
Creek.
yep, Portland Creek.
So you've been to Mountain Waters Resort.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. This is perfect because I'm going up there for the first time. Yeah, this year we're
But
heading up.
I'm one of those guys. I don't remember like numbers or
Oh,
names of
sure.
rivers. We
Yeah, yeah.
we we hit a couple spots within that area, right? Like there's the home water, and then there's a couple of other rivers, or maybe we were just farther up. Like one morning, I remember it took us like 3 hours to get to where we were going to fish, like driving up into it, and we were pretty close to where like Lee Wolf and his wife fished and everything else like that. So yeah,
Yeah. Did you guys find some salmon there?
I did. Yeah, I actually had a lot of luck on that.
Really?
Yeah, um, it was an interesting trip. I think everybody did hook up. I had some banner days, and there was just one day I was there, and I had all the small wet flies or whatever, and undertakers, and
Right.
I had purchased a couple, tied up a couple, and just kind of went with the guide's recommendation. But the guide was there and he had a bomber, and he goes, "Do you want to try this?" And I don't know if anyone had put one on yet at that time. And, bomber fishing is, I guess it has to be, there's a certain window for it. And he felt like it was the right time. And man, I put that thing on, and that day I think I had 5 or 6 on.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't land any of them. Um,
Did they just tear you up?
yeah, I don't. I was doing something wrong too, because they're like, hey, you got to keep your rod high, which was different for me, and maybe it's because they're using smaller barbless hooks there, so you do want to put some of the shock into the rod tip. Maybe I'm
Right.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I
Because
just
you're
know
using
that.
small stuff. You're using like size what, like eights or tens?
Yeah, they weren't. I mean, I guess the bomber hook was bigger. I don't know. Maybe I just fumbled and failed, but I had fun nonetheless. And I wasn't just catching grills, so there was a couple nice
Yeah.
salmon that were on the end of my line. So I took that as a win, though. That was pretty fun.
Oh yeah, that's a win. I
You
feel
know,
like steelhead Atlantic salmon fishing. If you're
yeah,
getting the tug, you're hooking up and you got a
Yeah,
fish
and it
on.
was
I
just
mean,
in a 3 hour window. I had like 5 or 6 on in that
wow.
spot. So
Was that on Portland Creek or a stream up, another stream up around the
we
area?
went upstream.
Yeah, you went upstream.
Yeah, to a different spot, and I forget what that one is. I'll ask my buddy Tim when we're done. I'll tell
No
you
worries.
where that was. So
That's all
yeah.
good. No, it's awesome, and it's good to hear you got some
Well,
action. And you're, yeah,
what's what's funny with that though too, man? I gotta tell you a little story. I had a guide, because we were switching through guides, and a lot of them up there aren't really big into the two-handed thing. I'm some are, but most aren't, and you don't necessarily need it. And there's a case to be made about using the single hand rod and presentation and everything. Well, we got to this spot and there was, two fishermen with their guide, and they had already fished through the run a couple times. You can keep one or two grills, I think, up there. I can't remember what the rules or regulations are, but I know you can keep a certain amount of fish. And so they had gotten their two grills and decided to walk off the river. But I was watching them while they were fishing, and they, were just using the single hand rods, and they weren't really casting out more than 20 feet in front of them. So I actually had like a switch rod and like a short spay rod too. And so I started like launching out the bomber like farther, because I could see fish rolling out there. And the water had some chop on it, it was overcast, there was a little drizzle. So, I wasn't worried about, spooking them with like um, using like a shooting head or something to cast out. And man, I just started having a ton of luck out there, just
really.
with yeah. And I had the wrong setup too, man. I would not recommend this setup for Atlantic salmon going back there, but I had like a short Skagit with a floating tip and just like everything wrong about it for Atlantic salmon. But the thing was, like I said, the water was really choppy. No one had fished out to these fish out there, right? Because it's
Right.
kind of hard to reach that with trees behind you and not having the backcast room. And so I walked up to the head of this whole run, and just started casting that bomber out and kind of, the way the guide showed me maybe to present it through. And I just started up and worked down, and every few casts I would have one on, so.
No kidding.
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
Wow.
And I tell people that, and they're like, because I hear people say all the time, two-handed rod, why would you use it? And you'll just spook fish. And I get that. I mean, I
Right.
think in different.
Yeah, splash in the water and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but me personally, I mean, I'm a two-handed rod kind of junkie. So I would still take a 12-foot, seven
Yeah.
weight and
Is
maybe.
that the rod? Is that the rod a 12-footer, not anything bigger? That's about the right length. And
It depends on where you're at. If I was going to go back to that area, Portland Creek, I would personally, I mean, if I was just going to take spay rods, I would probably take a 12-footer in that 7 weight type category. And then I would take a 14-footer in that like 8-9 category, something like 8-9-10, let's just say that.
for the lower river, yeah.
Yep, for the lower. And then because that 12-footer and you can run an integrated kind of spay line or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of options. Gale Force,
yeah.
I mean, I use their rods and lines. Tim's tributary line would be awesome.
Oh, the tributary? Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah, for the wet flies and stuff. And I personally would use like kind of a multi tip, something with a little bit of power behind it for bombers, you know what I'm saying? And
Right.
you would be running it all floating or whatever, but they're a big bushy fly. And if I were to do it different, I would run more Scandi grain weights and finesse, but yeah, I think it works great.
When it comes to premium flies that deliver results, drifthook.com is the name to trust this season. Whether you're chasing trout with dry flies, swinging streamers, or dialing in those Euro nymphs, they've got everything you need. Here's a quick story. I was fishing a tricky spring creek earlier this year and nothing was working. Then I pulled out a Royal Wolf from the Drifthook box. I cast upstream, letting it drift effortlessly toward a holding fish. It was textbook. One of the biggest fish in the run rose, sipped the fly, and the fight was on. That's definitely a moment I'll never forget. Their fly kits ship free straight to your door, fully stocked and ready for action. You can support a great small business right now in this podcast by heading over to drifthook.com today. That's Drifthook, Drifthook. Use the code SWING at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Pescador on the Fly offers a full spectrum of fly fishing gear for any angler at any budget. By bringing high-performance rods directly to the angler, they eliminate the middleman markup, saving you time and money. The top-tiered El Rey series is designed for serious anglers, with the El Rey G6 being the most packable, high-performance rod on the market. And most anglers who try the G6 can't believe it is a 6-piece rod. It performs just like a 4-piece. There's no difference in performance. Whether you're fishing local streams or embarking on your next adventure across the world, the G6 delivers precision and power wherever you go. You can get 10% off your next order right now if you use the code WETFLYSWING at checkout. That's PescadorOnTheFly.com. Use the code WETFLYSWING for 10% off. Never fly without your G6. Discover the El Rey series and more at PescadorOnTheFly.com.
We're excited because we're going there this year, and then I think we're going to also have Rick Kustich is going to be coming up here.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to have. I kind of was thinking the same thing. I was like, man, it would be great to get Rick up there because I think it's mostly a single hand, but I think there's a lot of people obviously interested in the two hand stuff. So that's what we're building. I'm going to get a taste of the. I kind of love the single hand too. I think it'll be fun to catch one. Hopefully,
it is great.
Single, yeah.
It's a good weapon. I think it's it's just another tool in the toolbox, and
exactly.
The guides are comfortable with them too, so that's helpful. I would definitely recommend taking one. I'm just stubborn, and I just fish my two-handers the whole time because that's how I wanted to do it. But it would be wise to take a 10-foot 7-weight, 10-foot 8-weight, or something like that.
Good. Well, this is good. We'll have to follow up with you more on after we get on these.
Oh man,
I'll let you know, and maybe we could trade notes. But I was thinking too on fly. So I'm heading out, and this is a good night. It sounds like you're not tying quite as much as you used to, but would you occasionally get orders? People would be heading up to the OP or some winter steelhead fishing on the coast and say, hey, I need some flies. Alex, what would you recommend? Is that would you do stuff like fill orders like that?
Yeah, definitely. That was kind of the main way that I did it. There was a season where I was tying quite a bit and, would tie for a couple shops. And then, mainly it was just kind of word of mouth like that. Like, hey, man, we saw some of your flies. Yeah, we saw you posting flies and we, man, this one looks beautiful. Would you do me up a dozen or two or whatever? I got a trip to the OP. Here's some colors I like. Any recommendations you have?
Yeah. What would that be? So we're actually heading up this weekend to hit the OP. What would be your recommendation if we had to say what are a few patterns? I know there's pretty the standard stuff, but what would you say would be good to have in maybe to mix it up a little bit?
Oh man, I guess it depends on the river system you're at up there. I'll be honest with you, Dave, I have personally not fished the OP, and I can't really remember what was requested of me up there. So I don't want to just regurgitate to you black and blue in this.
Right. Well, that's the great thing about it is that literally it could be, black and blue, whatever, purple,
Yeah, pinks and oranges. And yeah, I don't know enough about the OP, Dave. So
what about that munker fly? Do you think that one would work up there?
Yes, absolutely. I would definitely take a couple of those with you. So,
Yeah.
And yeah, I like it. I mean, I would do one in some shrimpy colors, some pinks. And I know that, I've seen a lot of flies hanging out of OP fish's mouths with pink in it, no doubts. And I would definitely try that black copper Kelly green. We've just had a lot of success with that, unique color combo, even when conditions were really tough. And that's where it seemed to really shine was when, nothing else was working. You know what I mean? And I started tying it another way instead of the zonker, and I just called it the tsunami munker because I've seen tsunami flies from Scandinavia, which was a sunray shadow with a muddler head. So what I did was instead of doing a zonker, I would just do kind of a nice little wing of fox or something like that. So it almost was like a temple dog with a munker head. But what that did was made it even easier to cast and sink and present in the water and everything else like that. So yeah, I would do one kind of shrimpy and then I would definitely try that black copper Kelly green color.
Okay, Kelly Green. And what is the? We've talked about the temple dog before, but describe that again. What is the temple dog? How is that different than the other flies that are out there?
Yeah, yeah. So Temple Dog was, like Haken Norling, Michael Froden, in the mid '80s. They have been, fishing some of the standard Scandi type flies, like bucktail and stuff like that. And essentially, it's, Temple Dogs on a tube, and they're predominantly three wings with a hackle in between, but it's just the way you tie that, fox hair in at the top where you get a nice teardrop type pattern. But instead of having like it's not just like marabou all in the round or ostrich all in the round, it's a very significant wing, and so it's going to be slimmer than other flies in the water and still have a presence. And it definitely, has a great bait fishy look to it as well. For whatever reason, it has just worked on Atlantic salmon for years. I think every Scandinavian probably has a temple dog in their wallet now or something. They just move and breathe, and I think here, especially in North America, since most people aren't fishing that, so if you're with a group of guys and you're not the first one through the pool or whatever, it's nice to have something that's just different, swims
Different.
different. So
Yeah. It swims quite a bit differently than, say, your typical intruder or whatever.
100%, yeah. And I mean, another great pattern is Stu's Potbelly Pig.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, he is, that fly has proven itself on steelhead salmon here on the Pacific migratory fish. So, and it's even slimmer and has less to it. So I think there's something about switching up from what everybody else has and going a little sparser and lighter, and they're easy to cast too. I think that's a big part of it. I think when guys switch from big bulky flies that they struggle to cast to flies that are easy to present, that probably has a lot to do with it, Dave, to be honest.
Right. Do you tie more on tubes or shanks?
I guess tubes, but I still do tie on shanks occasionally and fish them. It's kind of more of a mood thing. I'm kind of sold on tubes in general. Just their hookup rate, I think, is really good because you're, essentially tied directly to the hook, right? That's where there's no leverage given up at all on a tube because, I mean, your tippet is right to the eye of the hook you're actually fishing. So you set the hook, you're pulling directly on a hook. You through the fight, you're pulling directly on the hook. Where
Right.
where a shank with stinger wire, you're not actually having a direct connection to the
Yep.
hook, right? You have the leverage of the stinger wire and then the pulling at the top of a shank. So I've had better success landing fish like on tubes, like brought to hand, let's say. I have gone back to tying on single hooks like spay hooks and stuff quite a bit too, just for fun.
Right. Traditional.
Yeah, that's kind of been a thing for me the last year, just to switch it up and cast a spay line where I have the space and time to do it in a Lady Caroline. So, but if I was on a trip and I really wanted to land and catch fish, I definitely would probably have a majority of an assortment of tubes, save for the Portland Creek, trip there. So you would definitely want a lot on hooks.
Oh, you would. You don't want a lot of tubes for Portland Creek?
No, I mean, you're not going to fish anything big, like a couple, like really
Oh,
small.
right.
You could do like the riffled tube, like hair wings, where you literally just put like a tiny clump of black squirrel
Right. Like just a little bit on the tube,
and
right? Like
just
just a
lasso
little.
that down
Yeah.
and call that good. Burn the needle through the side of the tube or come underneath.
Yeah, that is the thing with the tube because it is a little bit of depending on the size of the tube, it's a little bit bigger profile, right? Like I think of
It
the
is.
the
Yeah.
flies we use for summer steelhead, which is I think there's some good comparison between Atlantic salmon, is that there's about as sparse as you can make them and they're these little, and it's a tiny little slim noodle in the water, and it pulses a little bit, but it's a herring, just like we just had John Shuey on recently, and we talked about the old traditional herrings.
Oh,
They've kind of
right.
gone away a little bit, right, because the intruders have taken over, but they're still super
Yep.
effective. A little sparse fly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know. They're just, I did not fish many tubes up on Portland Creek because, unless you really want one to just stay up on top like that, you know what I mean? If you really want one kind of skating, I'm not saying they can't be done, but I felt like tying on the hooks and just, simple little hair wings and stuff like that. I don't know. It was just more enjoyable. I thought they were easier to fish. You could get some depth if you wanted to, depending on the weight of the hook, if you mended it, if that was the thing. It was just, yeah, I just mainly fish hooks there. Really wish doubles were legal
Right.
in Newfoundland. I'm not sure why they're not.
You mean a hook with two
Oh
shanks
yeah,
there?
yeah.
There.
That's what I fish that quite a bit on the. Well, back to Atlantic salmon real quick. So the St. Mary's, which is kind of my home water, they've been stocking Atlantic salmon there since the 80s.
Hmm.
And so we have a pretty robust population of Atlantics that swim into that river system and the Asabo. And I guess technically they're a landlocked strain because they're in the Great Lakes and stuff like that, but they swim in pretty big. And I mean, we don't get like massive size Atlantic salmon, but you can get like 20 pounders and stuff like that, which they're all chrome silvered out, and
Wow.
everything else. So, and I'll fish on that river system. It's really clear water, so you don't need anything big, but I'll fish on doubles quite a bit. And the beauty of that is you can have a small size 10 double but it has it's strong enough to hold a big fish too. So really doesn't. I know a lot of people kind of shy away from doubles and they see doubles and they think of like hurting fish or whatever. That's not been my experience. They're definitely not trebles, Dave. And
They're not.
the other, no. And the other thing is too, I mean, you can get them barbless. Atlantics have soft mouths too, compared to steelhead or Chinook. And so the doubles actually penetrate, better on Atlantics than they would steelhead. That's another thing to think about. Generally, a double, if you were fishing for steelhead, isn't going to penetrate as deeply versus like a single point. You know what I mean? Because you have 2 points of contact, and so it's harder to bury it a little bit deeper. Where Atlantics, it goes in a little easier. But all that to say, I mean, if you do it correctly, I can use really small hooks. And if I hook into a 15 or 20 pound fish, I have the strength to actually land the fish. And I love like just a small hair wing or sparse cascade, which is a hair wing on like a size 10 double for
Oh wow.
Atlantics. Yeah, it's awesome. You just cast it out there. It's got a little bit more weight than a single hook, so you can get under the water column a little bit easier, and it just rides upright and true. And yeah, it seems like every Atlantic I've hooked with a double, I end up bringing it to hand pretty quick.
You do. So there you
Yeah,
go. So I didn't
I
realize
love
that.
it.
So it's a good, and that's part of it. Fishing the fly, like if you're using one of these temple dogs, you would want to keep that fly right, kind of in the position. Is that part of the thing, keeping it how you want to fish it with the double hook?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, yep. So if you were, I haven't used them a lot. I mean, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this. I wanted to do a little bit more experimenting with the double hooks and steelhead on the Great Lakes, mainly because they're not wild fish. And if you were to accidentally kill one, you could harvest and eat it, and then I wouldn't use it again because I mainly catch and release. I don't know if I've ever kept a steelhead, to be honest
Oh,
with
really?
you here. I mean, we could, and I like the taste of trout and everything else. I've heard people say, "Oh, steelhead aren't good to eat anyway." I beg to differ.
No, steelhead are great.
I think they are, yeah, for sure.
Well, the hook is interesting because I think that, like you said, the treble. I think people, when they hear the double hook, they instantly, if they've never used one, they think treble. And if you've used a treble hook, which I have, not recently, but I have, and the thing about treble hook is that it'll get caught up like 3 times in their mouth,
Yes.
or and then it's like
Y-
you're ripping that thing out. And if it's barbed, it's toast, right? But what you're
Yep.
saying is a double hook, barbless double hook, is not any harsher than just a single hook.
I don't think so. I mean, you could make the case. I mean, if you think about, and what I'm saying is you can use one much smaller too and get the strength. I mean, if you look at like a size 2 steelhead hook, right? Or even some of the traditional flies. And I'm not knocking guys who fish traditional flies. I mean, in my mind, if you compare that to like a size 10 or size 8 double, I mean, a single hook, if it goes into the wrong spot, is going to penetrate a lot deeper. It's just naturally pulling on it, it has the potential to hook all the way through, where it's harder to pull 2 points through. And I'll be honest, a lot of the Scandinavians have actually switched to single hooks because of that. They can penetrate them deeper and are actually getting more fish to hand. So I think there's a misnomer about doubles in general. And like you said, I think people see it and they immediately think trebles and killing fish. I do want to say I haven't used them long enough to know one way or another, but in my time fishing with doubles,
Yeah.
and I'm very careful about it. I make sure it's legal. I've only ever done it on the Great Lakes. So certainly not going to come out west or anything. And I couldn't even use them in Newfoundland, and I wanted to. And you would think there's Atlantic salmon. You can even keep some, but it's not legal, so we didn't do it. But in my experience, I mean, I get away with a nice small hair wing, like they're beautiful. Pinch a black squirrel, touch a flash right at the head. That's it, right? Be an awesome summer steelhead fly. And you could use size 12 doubles even. And I doubt they're coming loose. I doubt they're going to bend
That's the
it.
advantage.
And yeah, I have not seen them do any damage like in the way that you would think. I guess if they swallowed it,
Right, but if they swallow anything, they're gonna be toast.
if you swallow, a size 2 stinger hook, I think you have a lot of trouble too. So, yeah.
Were you on you mentioned the St. Mary's Rapids, so are Atlantic salmon and steelhead in that section?
Yeah, so in the St. Mary's, what runs that river right now are yeah, we get the steelhead, there's a population of resident rainbow trout, there's some Kamloops rainbow trout in there. Atlantic salmon come in, the pink salmon come in, some coho come in, the kings come in.
Wow.
We get sturgeon that come in.
This is what's cool about the Great Lakes,
Yeah,
because you could travel all around the world and target certain areas of these species. But in the Great Lakes, I mean,
yeah,
where else can you get Atlantic salmon, steelhead, Chinook salmon, all these species, right? Is this
right.
the only place?
It is cool, man, right? I mean, that's one of the things about the Great Lakes. Like, I am happy to live here, and I think like, yeah, would it be nice to have a home right somewhere on the Skeena, or you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Right.
that'd be fantastic. And or some of the rivers in Alaska, which are amazing,
Yeah,
but
but you wouldn't be able to catch Atlantic salmon out there.
no, you wouldn't. So it is neat. I mean, if you are into, if you're a sportsman or whatever and fishing, especially fly fishing, the Great Lakes isn't too bad, right?
No.
Because I mean, we get like kind of they call them coaster brook trout. They're migratory, like our steelhead are migratory here. So and they get pretty good size. I think the largest one that was on the Nipigon River
Yeah, the
is
Nipigon, we've heard about that.
16 pounds. Yep, brook
God,
trout.
did you guys fish any? Because that's something we're talking at Mountain Waters, fishing for brooks. Because we got some people that
Oh,
haven't
I
done.
think that'd be awesome on a trout spade. They get
Yeah, trout spade,
migratory brook trout there.
like a what, like a five
Four
weight
weight,
or six, a four weight? Yeah,
4 maybe. Yeah,
three,
yeah.
four, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends how big their migratory brook trout gets. So
I think they're saying, I think they get them in the, they can get up to like 4 or 5 pounds or somewhere in that range, right? Maybe bigger, but I think 5 pounds is pretty typical.
I think you'd be fine with a 4 weight all around.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I would take. Yeah. So I mean, I've seen carp swim up the St. Mary's. This is just one river too, right? And whitefish I've seen swim up the St. Mary's. And then further down in the St. Mary's system are muskie and walleye and all kinds of stuff. That's just one river. So, and that's kind of how the Great Lakes is in
Yeah.
general, right? Like there's a river 15 minutes from my house, and that's one that I fish quite a bit. It's a little bit smaller, not as many crowds, not as big of runs and stuff like that. But on that river, I mean, there's rainbow trout, brook trout, brown trout. There's pinks that'll come in,
Thanks.
coho, steelhead, king salmon. I've caught smallmouth bass, in it before. I've seen sturgeon in it, and that's just the nature of being on the Great Lakes, the stocking programs,
Yeah,
stuff
it
like
is. That's
that.
just what it is.
So,
No, it sounds amazing. I can't wait to get back there for sure and get up in that area. But let's take it out here. We talked. Let's talk a little history. I love a little history lesson before we get
sure.
out of here. Well, first off, before we get there, anything else you want to highlight on what you have going with any flies or any notes there?
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, well, for sure. So I am just, slowly but surely kind of stepping out of doing any kind of fly tying orders altogether. I just don't have the time anymore
Yeah,
with
totally.
the kids. No, I mean, Sam and I, so I have a wife, 4 kids. My oldest is in high school, and so we're busy with that.
Yeah.
And the fly tie, and we have our own business, which is year round, and it just it took a lot of time away and evenings away. I mean, I'm thankful for it and everything. So my goal, I kind of bought a little shed, one of those she sheds to go outside, an Amish built one, and I'm going to set up all my fly tying stuff out there. And I really hope to just do more like fly tying videos and educational stuff just because I enjoy it. I like playing with material. I like, building flies and stuff like that. And I just like staying a part of the community and chatting with people. So whether people like that or not, whatever, that's my plan to move in that direction. And then in my free time, I mean, to be honest with you, spend more time with family and stuff like that. Because, well, the realization that I only have our oldest daughter, Margot, I mean, she's a freshman now. So I'm like, oh, what do we have? 3 years, 4 years,
Right.
maybe? And
That's
depending.
cool.
Yeah. So I can't be,
You can't be everywhere. That's one thing you can't be is
I
you
don't want
got
to be
you got
sitting there trying to fill orders all night.
no, and
So
you got to focus on family for sure first. So, well, where would somebody go if they wanted to get some of these mucker flies? Where could they, could they buy these from
actually,
somebody else? Yeah.
yep. Yeah, actually, they certainly could. There's a guy in Wisconsin, and he actually sent me a care package of some flies. And I'll be honest with you, I had done like a tsunami munker, which was kind of a different take on it. And he sent me some, and I think they were better than mine, to be
Yep.
honest with you. And that's Mitch's Fly Bench. He's in Wisconsin. People know Mitch in the community, but if you look up Mitch's Fly Bench
Okay.
on Instagram and stuff like that, he's one of the best I've seen at tying them. And if I ever needed some and couldn't tie them myself, I personally would trust him to tie them to spec. So,
Good.
yeah,
Yeah, I see it. Mitch's fly bench right there.
he
So
is a great guy. He's a phenomenal fly tyer. Yeah, and when he sent me a box of stuff and a couple patterns, I quote unquote my patterns. I want to be careful because everything I've tied is just a culmination of ideas that
sure.
people have done. So anyway, he sent me that, and I texted him back. Actually, I went out and caught a steelhead on one of his flies.
Nice.
Yeah, and I don't. It's weird. Fly tyers don't like fishing other people's flies all that much. And I'm like, man, I can't believe it, Mitch. Yours are better than mine. So
There you
anyway,
go.
yes.
Perfect. Well, we got a great resource there. Well, tell me this. You mentioned when we got started off air the history. I would love to hear again the city that you live in there. It's one of the oldest in the country. Take us back there. Remind us again what is the history?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just a really interesting little uh, point of fact, I guess, is so I live in St. Ignace, Michigan, and then north of me, 45 minutes to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, right across the border, Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. So St. Ignace, where I live, is the third oldest continually operating established city in the United States. Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan would be the second. And those were in the 1600s. I think St. Ignace was like 1671 or somewhere around there. And that was all established by the French in
The
this
French.
area. Yep, they came over from, well, obviously, they hit the coast, Newfoundland, somewhere over there, and then through Quebec and Montreal.
Uh-huh.
And, a lot of fur trading and everything. And then the Jesuits, set up churches and stuff and in the area and all that kind of stuff. So it was very much a French and Native American. Like people, when they think about American history, they don't realize the French and the Indians actually got along pretty well.
Oh, they did. Right.
It was the British that the French and natives had been living together for a while, right? So everybody in this area, if your family goes back far enough, we all have a certain amount of French and Native American in us.
Yeah.
That's how that all worked out. So yeah, it's kind of just a little piece of history right there. So it is a very old area, and that goes back to my last name has been anglicized, but it's what it is Belonga, which is a very common French Canadian name, and you still see it all over, and it's spelled Belanger. That's who we are. Ours just got changed, and now it kind of looks like bologna, and that's what it is. So
Bologna, right, bologna. Yeah,
everyone's like, "Are you Italian?" And Dave, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I've been like, "Yep," because I don't want to go through this history
it's too much. Yeah,
yeah.
We're all kind of like you said, we're all a melting pot. So it's
oh man, yeah,
it makes sense.
I don't know what I have in me anymore. So yeah,
if you go back to 1671, that time, what species were going through that canal, or maybe there wasn't even a canal, but what species were in the Great Lakes?
Oh, that's a great question. So no, there was no lock system there. So it was a real treacherous waterway that the natives did fish, but it was extremely dangerous. And that whole rapid system probably went for several miles, I would assume, because there's a 30+ foot difference right there between Huron and Superior, right? So might even had almost a waterfallish look. I think what we had in the Great Lakes at that time, there was sturgeon for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at a list now. I see there's over 30 native species in Lake Superior: lake trout, lake whitefish,
lake trout, lake whitefish,
walleye.
Maybe like Menominee, Cisco, which are kind of offshoots of the whitefish. But no, there was no salmon or steelhead or like rainbow trout, stuff like that. Those were all introduced here.
Yeah, but there were lake trout, right? But you had some
lake trout. Yeah.
Do you still find lake trout out there?
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, funny thing, I forgot to add that to the species list that you can fish on the Great Lakes. So if I want to, it's more prolific in Wisconsin for some reason, and I'm not sure why that is. But again, where I'm at, I'm about 4 hours from Green Bay. So, and it's a real beautiful drive. And that's really not that far if you think about traveling to fish, As I talk to guys out west, you know what I mean? If there's a river within 3 hours, they almost call that a home river, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
We just have so many here. So what else we get is, so we have lake trout out in the Great Lakes. There's a couple species of them or varieties. I can't think of the word. But then we also have lake run brown trout, which are a sea trout, right? That's what brown trout are, and they're related to Atlantic salmon. So we have 3 strains of that. I know at least 2. We have the sea forellin. There's another one called rosy red, and some other. I don't know what it is. See, I'm bad about these names.
Yeah,
but when they run into the rivers, when you first catch them, they're all silvered out. They look like an Atlantic salmon, kind of. You can tell by their face and the spotting, but you can get pretty large size lake run browns, we call them, but they're sea forellins, and it's funny because the first time I caught an Atlantic salmon in the fall up here, I thought I caught a brown trout because they turn and get that brown trout coloration, right? So, yeah, so that's another species. Like people, and I know people head down to Argentina for the sea run trout, which I'm sure that's amazing. But you can catch them here in the Great Lakes too.
No, we're definitely gonna have to get back out there soon. So this has been good, Alex. I think we'll leave it there for today. We'll send everybody out to at Straits on the Fly, and they can follow up with you there on Instagram. And yeah, this has been great.
Oh man, Dave, thanks for what you do, and you got one of the best podcasts out there. I love listening to it, and if you are ever coming around this area or whatever, hit me up, man. We could trip out of it. There's a lot to do here, so
Will do. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, see you, Dave.
If you get a chance, check in with Alex at Straits on the Fly on Instagram. Checking in with him, let him know you heard this podcast. If you're interested in checking in more with me on any of our trips, you can check in, send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com. We just announced the On the Mark Dry Fly School. This giveaway is going on right now. If you want a chance to win, you can go to wetflyswing.com/giveaway. And if you want to save a spot for the Big Mo, the Missouri River this year, we've got limited spots available. You can send me an email there anytime and I'll let you know. We'll also have a link in the show notes where you can sign up to get your name on that list. And we're heading out. We've got more of the same goodness to come. If you have any questions, as always, check with me. If you haven't yet, check in with me. If you're new to the podcast or haven't said hi in a while, just send me an email to the one I mentioned before. And I'm getting out of here. Hope you have a great afternoon, great evening, or morning. And thanks again for stopping in today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.